John Chu, who directed Wicked, the nicest guy ever. And his parents were immigrants. They met in the U.S. and started a restaurant in Palo Alto called Chef Chu's. And his parents wanted the kids to be doctors and lawyers and professional things. And from fourth grade, all John wanted to do was make movies that he had sort of discovered. And it's like all he wanted to do. And his parents thought it was kind of stupid. So I think he was in ninth grade and he was supposed to be sleeping and he was doing a video on his laptop. And his mom came in and said, "Put that nonsense away. You've got to get your rest so you do well in school tomorrow." And he burst into tears and he said, "You can't make me stop. This is what I love. This is what I want to do for my life." And she said, "Go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." And she picked him up at school the next day and she'd been to the library with 10 filmmaking books. And she said, "If you want to do it, be the best."
Welcome to Evoke Greatness, the podcast for bold leaders and big dreamers who refuse to settle. I'm your host, Sunny, CEO, entrepreneur, and someone who's spent over 20 years building, leading, and learning what it really takes to rise. Every step of that journey has taught me something worth passing on. Lessons in business, leadership, resilience, and the psychology behind it all. Here, you'll hear raw conversations, unfiltered truths, and the kind of wisdom that ignites something deeper in you, your courage, your conviction, and your calling. This show will help you think bigger, lead better, and show up bolder in every part of your life and business. This is your place to grow. Let's rise together. And it's like, gosh, if we just leaned in a little bit more, even as parents, right? Because it's not necessarily, it's like the caught, not taught. So if you're exhibiting some of these things, your kids are catching you doing these really cool things, taking a risk, trying something, viewing something a little bit different than maybe the rest of the world views it. I think that's so much about like how they go, maybe I could try something. Maybe I could see this a little bit differently. And then they actually take the chance on doing it.
Yeah, I did something earlier in the week and I actually posted about it on Instagram because I walk 5 miles a day and like I drive to an appointment and then I come home and then I walk 5 miles. Or if I'm in Miami, I walk 5 miles in the morning because it gets hot and then I come home and then I drive to my appointment. And I was like, why don't I just walk to my appointment?
Right.
Why was I doing it the way it's always been done just because that's how people always do it? That's kind of stupid. I can just walk to get my hair cut and then walk back and then I don't have to walk in the neighborhood.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, it's the willingness to see it differently. That also reminds me of something that we heard in the news recently, which was someone who broke the sub 4 hour, I think it's sub 4 hour marathon. Maybe it's sub 2 hour. Anyway, it broke a record of which people thought,
second something.
Yeah, of like, there's no way that it can be done under this period of time, or like the 4-minute mile. People 50 years ago didn't think that was possible. And so everybody just believed that it wasn't possible until one time someone was like, "Hey, I can run pretty fast. I'm going to try this. Oh, hey, look."
Or the horse that won the Derby, who was like the last horse in the pack.
Exactly.
And the jockey didn't say, "Well, we're the last horse in the pack. I'm giving up."
Yeah.
He was like, "Okay, time to win."
Yep, absolutely. You say the only thing that truly matters is parents' attitude. What does that actually look like on a random, Tuesday afternoon? Not necessarily in theory, but like real life.
I think it's just being proud of your kids for what they're doing. As I said, not necessarily for what they're not doing or not being successful in. I can give you a couple examples. One of my favorites is John Chu, who directed Wicked, the nicest guy ever. And his parents were immigrants. They met in the U.S. and started a restaurant in Palo Alto called Chef Chu's. And his parents wanted the kids to be doctors and lawyers and sort of professional things. And from fourth grade, all John wanted to do was make movies that he had sort of discovered. And it's like all he wanted to do. And his parents thought it was kind of stupid. And so I think he was in ninth grade and he was supposed to be sleeping, and he was doing a video on his laptop, and his mom came in and said, "Put that nonsense away. You've got to get your rest so you do well in school tomorrow." And he burst into tears and he said, "You can't make me stop. This is what I love. This is what I want to do for my life." And she said, "Go to sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." And she picked him up at school the next day, and she'd been to the library with 10 filmmaking books. And she said, "If you want to do it, be the best."
Oh, that's a perfect example. That's a perfect example. You have another story about Tony Hsieh, the Zappos CEO, asking Elliot if there were people at the summit that he'd only hang out with, or that he wouldn't hang out with other than the fact that they were there.
No, if
And
they weren't famous.
if
Are
they
there
weren't
people,
famous.
or if they weren't successful, are there people you wouldn't want to hang out with if they weren't successful? And are there people here who you wouldn't want to hang out with if they weren't successful? And Elliot said yes. And Tony said, "Then you can never invite them back because it will ruin everything you're trying to do." And it was like, this was the second one. Elliot had this first one with 18 people. And then this was the first one with like 60 people. And Tony said this, and Elliot was like, it was like an epiphany. Up until, he had just been inviting successful people, people with X amount of, EBITDA or whatever. And it was an epiphany. And he said, "I'm not going to invite people with a certain amount of, income or, revenue. I'm going to invite people who have started something and who are nice." And when you change your definition of who you're inviting to someone who has started something and who is a kind person, suddenly you don't just get a bunch of white men. You get, a much more diverse group. And so from then on, it's that summit is just, it's people who have started something and who are nice people.
Wow.
And if you're a jerk,
Yeah.
you don't get invited back, by the way.
There we go. Which is
No
a
matter
totally fair.
No matter how successful you are.
That's right.
No jerks
That's right.
allowed.
That's a great way to shift the dynamic of a room, right? It only takes one jerk to draw the room down. But when you set boundaries around who you're willing to allow in the room, because ultimately someone is the thermostat, and they're adjusting the temperature of the room. And so there's a choice. It can either draw it down or it can heat it up. And it sounds like he's really fine-tuned the group of folks who want to be a part of that.
Right. I can give you another example from your question. Benny Blanco, who's a famous songwriter, and he's more famous now. He just married Selena Gomez, but he's amazing. He has like 25 number one hits. When he was in kindergarten, his mother said she'd get a call every week from his teacher saying, "Benny won't sit in the circle." And she'd say, "So." And when he was in high school, he said all his teachers found him so annoying. And she found him a music teacher outside of school who said he was the most talented kid he'd ever worked with in 30 years. And that meant more to Benny than whatever his high school teachers thought of him. So she went out of her way. She knew his teachers didn't like him and didn't think much of him. And she went out of her way to find someone in the field that he was interested in who thought he was amazing. So there's things parents can do.
Yeah. It's so interesting how it goes back to what you first said, which is kids give off signs as to what they have interest in. My now 18-year-old, he's maybe the more outgoing of the two, and my younger one is a little bit more reserved. And my brother, who's been an entrepreneur for many years, happened to make mention one time. He said, "That kid's going to be one hell of an entrepreneur." And I said, "What?" I didn't it was such a foreign thing that he would say that. I said, "Why do you say that?" He said, "He can sell to anyone. He'll walk up and he'll give his spiel, and it doesn't hurt his feelings if it doesn't go well." And I thought, and so ever since he said that, I have seen my son in a different way. So it's funny sometimes when we don't see it, but with those within close proximity do. And so now I think back to the lemonade stands and the cutting the grass and washing the cars and all these things. He'd go around the neighborhood and ask people, "Do you want me to clean your garbage cans out? Do you want me to do this?" And I thought, he really has been since he's been young. And so having him lean into those things, be willing to take the risk around it, and have parents who feel like, frankly, kid, go at it. Go
Right.
at it. Worst case scenario, you fall down, you skin your knees, and you get back up.
Right. No, that's great. I love that.
Okay, quick pause to tell you about my partners at Row Nutrition. I came to them as a customer first. I have both Hashimoto's and I am smack dab in the middle of perimenopause. Their liposomal supplements have been a game changer for my brain fog, fatigue, and inflammation. I'm currently taking their NAD+, glutathione, and curcumin, and I recently added in both collagen and creatine. Anyone who knows me knows I only put my name behind what I actually use, and Row has earned it. You can use the code SONNIE15, SONNIE15 for 15% off at rownutrition.com, or you can click the link in the show notes and it'll take you right there. All right, let's hop back into the episode. So sometimes it's just about paying attention and listening to those things that maybe you're not seeing. So I love that. You focused a lot on the role of the mother specifically. In a world where we, kind of push for equal parenting, was there something that you found about moms that felt like they had that bigger influence?
There's sort of a two unrelated part answer to that. The first is that the people I was interviewing, they're now 40 years old. So I think it's evolved. I think the parents of kids who are now 10 years old, the dads are more involved.
Mm.
The other part of that is that, the other answer is that I think moms in general tend to be more kind of nurturing and sympathetic. Several people told me about the influence of their dad, that their dad was their major influence in their life. But in general, I think it's the dads. Often the dads are like, well, you're going to have a normal job, right? And the mom is like, no, see how happy he is doing this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not always, but sometimes.
I think everybody talks about resilience, but you actually studied families where kids have it, right? What did those parents, we had talked about a few things, but maybe what did those parents specifically do, not say, but like what were maybe some of their actions that really helped build the thing so that kids didn't see, oh gosh, I don't want to fail. Like sometimes it's hard for us to allow our kids to see us fail, right? There's that element to it.
It's that whole thing about failure, that failure is not a bad thing. Failure is how you learn and grow. Every single one of them told me that they always knew they could go home again. John Chu told me, I always knew if things didn't work, that I could go home, and that gave me the courage to take big risks. He didn't have to go home. But I mean, so many of them, he wasn't the only one who said this. I heard this over and over and over and over, that their parents were always, you're going to have ups and downs. Nobody's like this, and we're here for you. The first one didn't work. That's okay. Maybe the second one will work, and maybe the third one will work. And one reason, this is a second edition of my book. One reason I did a second edition is, after 5 years, they were all doing something different. They had sold their company, or they had evolved their company, or they'd moved into a different aspect or something. Like, this is not like the 90s where, people graduate from college and get a job at IBM and stay there until they're 60 and retire. That's like, right. No, it's not that world anymore. And all these parents were just, go for it. And we're here when it doesn't work out. We know there's going to be ups and downs, and we know you're going to succeed in the end.
If there's a parent listening right now who's done everything right, they've the good school, the activities, the structure, but their kid seems anxious or joyless or like they're just going through the motions, what's something that you would recommend that they do with their kids to maybe help get them in the right direction?
I don't think there's a one answer for every child. I think the parents have to talk to them. You don't seem like you're really enjoying baseball. Do you want to quit? Is there something else you want to do instead? Is this not a good school for you? Do you want to try a different kind of school? Like, what can we do that's going to make a difference for you? What would you like to try instead? What isn't working? I don't know the answer. Do they know the answer? Have they ever asked?
It's almost like exploration, right? And sometimes we feel a little bit stuck when we want our kid to be fulfilled, but we can see that they're not. Sometimes you're a little bit frozen. And so I think that's great advice. Exploration and talking, sitting down and talking.
I mean, I can't tell you how many of these kids changed schools. They went from a small private school to a big public school. They went from a big public school to a small private school. They went to live with an uncle in a different town to go to a different kind of school. They went overseas to do school for a year. I mean, you have to see what's working for your kid. There's not like one size fits all. And, the kid has to know that whatever answer they give you, it's okay. You're not disappointed in the answer. I mean, I remember one kid in my kid's high school saying that, they had become like a champion figure skater and they were just done with it. And their parents were so disappointed because they'd seen how hard they'd worked and how well they'd done and how successful they'd become. No, it's not our call. It's their call. If they're done with figure skating, let them stop figure skating.
Yeah.
A lot of these people changed their passions several times in growing up. It was acting, and then it was singing, and then it was storytelling, and then it was modeling, and, then it was basketball. I mean, it's, see what works. And it's for them to quit when it isn't working.
Yeah, I love that. Well, as we wrap up, there's one question I always love to ask, and it's especially meaningful. As I said, I so intrigued by all that you've been able to take out of the people that you've met with and how you've distilled this into a book. And it's kind of this continued evolution. If it were your last day on earth and of all the conversations you've had and the experiences you've got to share with people and all of that, you could take one piece of guidance or advice for the world to share it with them, what would that be?
So I actually have this in my book. If I can read it.
Yes, please.
Even if your child doesn't want to be an entrepreneur, encouraging them to become more entrepreneurial by promoting certain attitudes can only be a good thing. All children thrive if they learn to believe in themselves, to pursue their true passions, to find new ways to solve old problems, to see opportunity where others see the status quo, to be willing to take on a challenge without proper credentials, to work with single-minded determination to achieve a goal, to take on risk if the project is worth trying, to learn that building something wonderful is its own reward, regardless of how much money you make, to view failure as feedback and setbacks as learning experiences, and to dream big dreams.
That was perfect. For those looking at the screen, here's a picture of the book. Margot, I would love for you to share, we'll put this in the show notes too, but where can people go to order the book, to find out, learn more about you, follow along with you?
It's on Amazon, and I'm on Instagram at Margot Bisnow, and I'm on LinkedIn. I think it's not very good at LinkedIn, Margot Machol Bisnow. And I have a website, raisinganentrepreneur.com, that has links to like the 100 articles I've written.
Excellent. Well, a lot of parents listen. And so I think this is going to be, like I said, really meaningful. It's especially meaningful to me. So I sure do appreciate your time. I appreciate the good works that you've been doing and how you've really leaned in to your children, even as adults. And I think other people's parenting and kids leaning into the entrepreneurial side of the world are going to benefit as a result of it. So I appreciate you.
Thanks, Sunny. This was so much fun. I loved your questions.
Okay, stay with me for just a second before you go. Living with Hashimoto's and being in the middle of perimenopause means brain fog shows up in the middle of conversations, decisions, and moments that matter. And I refuse to stay there. I'm very selective about what I put in my body. Intentional. So when Meraki Blue came to me wanting to support this community, I said yes because I already believed in what they do. Methylene Blue, mitochondrial health, cognitive performance, mental clarity. It works for me. I want it to work for you too. Meraki Blue is giving the Evoke Greatness community 20% off. Use the code Evoke Greatness, all caps, no spaces at checkout. I promise you, your brain isn't broken. It's just waiting on the right support. If today's episode challenged you, moved you, or lit a fire in your soul, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's ready to rise in their leadership, their business, and their life. And if you haven't already, I'd be so grateful if you took 30 seconds to rate and review the podcast. It's one of the most powerful ways to support the show and help us reach more bold leaders like you. Because this isn't just a podcast, it's a movement. We're not here to play small. We're here to lead loud and elevate how we think, lead, and execute, one bold and unapologetic step at a time. Until next time, stay bold, stay grounded, and make moves that make mediocre uncomfortable.